As Russia advances on its enemy, a warning these attacks could soon stretch beyond Ukraine's borders.
We are Russia's next target.
NATO chief Mark Rutte urging allies to step up coordination against Russian aggression, suggesting the threat of a world war is as close as ever.
Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured.
The process to peace is only inching closer. Volodymyr Zelensky met with US officials who he says want Ukraine to withdraw entirely from the Donbass region. That area would be demilitarised as a free economic zone. The Ukrainian leader wants assurances Russia won't take over, with any territorial concessions to be approved in a referendum and backed by robust security guarantees, including from Australia.
And we underlined it, impossible without Europe and all members of our coalition of the willing, from Canada to Japan, Australia and New Zealand.
The updated 20-point plan now rests with Donald Trump before it even gets to Moscow, with word of an understanding on the agreement by Christmas.
It's, a little bit complicated because you're cutting up land in a certain way. It's not the easiest thing. It's sort of like a complex real estate deal times 1,000.
Unlikely the gift of peace is near. In London, Jacqueline Robson, 7 News.
World War III. I know everybody here that talk about World War III going on around the world. And are we closer than ever to it? I truly believe so. And it's because after hearing everything that's going on with all of the countries around the world, man, and all of the conflict, you got the new ones, you got the United States and Venezuela. You got the old ones, you got China and Taiwan. China been threatening to take Taiwan over, whether by strength, by force, diplomacy. You have Congo and them with the war, India, Pakistan, North Korea, South Korea, China and Japan, Russia and Ukraine, Russia and Europe. There's just so much going on. So yes, I truly believe that World War III is right at the brink. And Trump and them also know as well that something is coming. Take a look at what he said.
Things like this end up in third world wars. Everybody keeps playing games like this. You'll end up in a third world war. No, one of the things I talked to China about is the denuclearization of weapons. We'd like to see if we could stop that. I'm talking about nuclear weapons. I've spoken to China about that. I've spoken to Russia about that. And I think it would be something that we would want to do, and they would like to do, and I think Russia would like to do.
They said they won't join you to start or a follow-on.
Well, that's what they've told you, but what they tell you is different than what they tell you.
And I'm just trying, Mr. President, just briefly, you made a commitment to the Europeans back in July, if I remember right, to participate in some kind of a peacekeeping force should there be a peace agreement. You mentioned, I think, air support, intelligence, and so forth. Does that commitment still stand? Is the U.S. ready to go contribute?
It's called the security agreement, basically, that they call it, the security agreement. Yeah, we would help. We would help with security because it's, I think, a necessary factor in getting it done. I thought that we were very close with Russia to having a deal. I thought we were very close with Ukraine to having a deal. In fact, other than President Zelensky, his people loved the concept of the deal. We threw something out.
This is the four-part deal.
Well, there's 4 or 5 different parts. It's, a little bit complicated because you're cutting up land in a certain way. It's not the easiest thing. It's sort of like a complex real estate deal times 1,000, right? But it's a deal that would have stopped the killing of thousands of lives every month. Thousands and thousands of lives, mostly soldiers, but as you know, there's some bombs being dropped.
Sort of a Korea-link ceasefire that we don't resolve?
Well, there's a meeting on Saturday. We'll see whether or not we attend the meeting. We said we'll attend the meeting if we think there's a good chance of. They want me to attend. They want us to attend, and we'll be attending the meeting on Saturday in Europe if we think there's a good chance. And we don't want to waste a lot of time. We think it's negative. We want it to get settled. We want to save a lot of lives. As you know, in the past we spent could be $350 billion, giving it to Ukraine. We got nothing in return, but we gave it to Ukraine. I ended up getting rare earth in return, even though I didn't spend money. And we are now selling weapons to NATO. We're not selling it to Ukraine. We're selling weapons at full price to NATO, as you know. They distribute those weapons probably to Ukraine for the most part. They're probably doing it to others also. But we're not involved in the war other than the fact that we are involved in a negotiation because people want us there.
Well, tensions between the United States and Russia have dramatically escalated, and now a Russian official is talking about the possibility of World War III. And Doug Luzader has more now on this ominous war of words from Washington. Doug, this is just troubling. What is the reaction in Washington?
Well, the idea of getting Russia to the negotiating table just seems like it's not likely to happen at this point. This is something that the White House has been talking about. President Trump is clearly frustrated at Russian President Vladimir Putin, and now we've had this exchange on social media. It's not clear what the next steps here are going to be, but there's a lot of pressure coming from Congress for the administration to do more in terms of sanctions against Russia. There's a report in the Kyiv Post now that President Trump is considering lifting some of the range restrictions on weapons that we have sent to Ukraine. I mean, those come with certain restrictions on them as far as, firing deep into Russian territory. If the U.S. were to lift those restrictions, it would give Ukraine a lot more flexibility to go after Russian targets. So this is not something that Russia would want to see. We don't know if this is going to happen, but again, there is this report that it's among the options the White House is considering.
Right. And just to read the president's comment here, President Trump posted to Truth Social, "If it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia." So what do we think the president's going to do next?
Well, the president is considering lifting these range restrictions. Right. There's also been talk about perhaps economic sanctions on Russia. We have been down this path before. Nothing seems to dissuade Russia from what appears to be Putin's ultimate goal, which would be taking over the entirety of Ukraine.
All right, troubling, something to watch. Doug Luzader in Washington, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said it. Things are heating up big time. Not a big war that everybody's looking forward to. Now that's China and Taiwan. And we know that China said they're going to take Taiwan, whether through diplomacy or by force. And right now, to this very day, as we speaking, China is threatening Taiwan, having naval drills around Taiwan, boxing them in. And, China really want Taiwan. Because they say that Taiwan was a part of them back in the 19-somethings or the 80s or whatever it was, 1800s. I don't know. I wasn't living back then and I didn't search that far. But all I know is Taiwan wants to be independent. And China say Taiwan is coming back home. It's almost like an ex-girlfriend that left the ex-boyfriend and he just want to force her to come back. I don't know. But China is mad because the United States of America and Trump have just approved an arms deal to Taiwan. I believe for $11 billion, something wrong like that. I don't know, but let's take a look.
China is retaliating against the United States over the approved arms deal with Taiwan, sanctioning 20 major American defense firms. Companies include Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, Boeing in St. Louis, Gibbs & Cox Incorporated, VSE Corporation, and more. All assets held by these companies in China will be frozen, and they will be banned from doing business in the country. Now, this is the Pentagon sounds the alarm over China's latest military developments to take Taiwan with brute force. Beijing is rapidly advancing its weaponry and military capabilities to conquer the island by 2027. Joining me now, Gaystone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, China announced it's conducting Justice Mission 2025 drills around Taiwan. That starts tomorrow. There had been a Pentagon report released last week that suggested that there were concerns within the political side of China that maybe 2027 was not the right year to invade Taiwan, but that some in the military believed that maybe it should be sooner. What do you make of this latest move by the Chinese?
This is an intimidation move by China. They're trying to intimidate the people of Taiwan, the people of America, people in the rest of the world, which means it's in our interest not to be intimidated. We've got to remember that China is not ready to impose a blockade on Taiwan or invade. The senior Chinese military is in the state of purges, and that includes the commander of the Eastern Theater Command, which is the command responsible for Taiwan. But we also know that an invasion of Taiwan would be extremely unpopular with the Chinese people. So this is a lot of huffing and puffing right now. We are now in the 7th week of a confrontation between China and Japan, which China picked. And the Japanese stood their ground, and the Chinese huffed and puffed, but they sort of backed away. And that, I think, is a lesson right now, that China is in no mood, the senior leadership, to do anything, because it's just not capable.
I want to emphasize that the Democratic Progressive Party authorities stubbornly adhere to the stance of Taiwan independence, attempting to seek independence through the U.S., even at the cost of turning Taiwan into a powder keg and an ammunition depot. This fully exposes their vicious nature as peace destroyers, troublemakers, and war instigators.
China has launched a sweeping show of military force around Taiwan. On December 29th, multiple branches of the Chinese military began large-scale joint drills across the Taiwan Strait and surrounding areas in what Beijing describes as a warning against separatism and foreign interference.
Beginning on December 29th, the Eastern Theater Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army is organizing the Justice Mission 2025 exercise, deploying forces from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force to the Taiwan Strait, areas to the north, southwest, southeast, and east of the Taiwan Island, focusing on subjects of sea-air combat readiness patrol, joint seizure of comprehensive superiority, blockade on key ports and areas, as well as all-dimensional deterrence outside the island chain.
The Chinese military says the drills involve vessels and aircraft approaching Taiwan from multiple directions, testing rapid maneuvers and joint assault capabilities across air, sea, and missile forces.
We strongly protest and condemn their arrogant and unreasonable actions, which will inevitably affect the safety of our air and sea transportation.
Beijing insists the drills are legitimate and necessary, framing them as a response to Taiwan independence forces and external pressure. The escalation comes amid anger over U.S. arms sales to Taiwan and comments from Japan, reinforcing how the Taiwan Strait remains one of the world's most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints.
Yeah, man, there's a lot that's going on right now surrounded World War III. And we know the Bible tells us there will be wars and rumors of wars in the end times, but the end is not yet. I believe we are at those times right now. And now we got the new one. The United States versus Venezuela, the new drug war. Where it's Donald Trump, our president of the United States, against Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela. And I can tell you, man, things are heating up in the Caribbean, and it look like full-scale war is going to break out. And Trump them says all because of drugs, and I believe so. But I believe it's because of something bigger as well. I believe it's because Maduro has allowed China and Iran and Russia in our own backyard, meaning Maduro is doing a lot of business with China and Russia, not Taiwan, but with China and Russia, which means they get to operate in our hemisphere, in our backyard. But I don't want to say too much about it. Y'all just check this little bit out right here and see what I'm talking about.
This story could mark a turning point in global geopolitics. Over the weekend of December 20 to 21, the United States intercepted and seized an oil tanker carrying nearly 1.8 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. The destination? China. The location? Off the coast of Venezuela. Washington claims the ship was part of Venezuela's so-called shadow fleet, operating under a false flag to evade U.S. sanctions on the Maduro regime. But for Beijing, this was not law enforcement. This was an act of piracy. China's foreign ministry bluntly called the seizure a serious violation of international law, accusing the United States of attacking sovereign rights and free trade. This is where the story gets dangerous, because this was not just about Venezuela. This was about China's energy security. Venezuela supplies up to 15% of China's crude oil imports, and for Beijing, interfering with that supply is a direct strategic threat. The Trump administration, meanwhile, is escalating pressure on Garacos, floating ideas of renewed sanctions, even a potential naval blockade. And now, China and Russia have both stepped in, pledging diplomatic support for Venezuela. So, the big question is this: could China take massive offense and jump into the US-Venezuela conflict? And could a direct showdown between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump push the world closer to a global war? Experts say direct military intervention by China is unlikely, but indirect involvement is very much on the table. Just look at Ukraine. The US never sent troops, but it sent money, weapons, intelligence, and diplomatic cover. China could do the same for Venezuela. Economically, Beijing could expand loans, oil for debt deals, and Belt and Road projects to keep Maduro's government afloat, despite U.S. sanctions. Militarily, China could supply surveillance drones, defensive systems, or training support without ever putting boots on the ground. Diplomatically, China could block U.S. moves at the UN, rally BRICS nations, and amplify anti-U.S. narratives globally. And on energy, Beijing could help Venezuela create alternative export routes, bypassing U.S. interdictions, challenging American control over global energy flows. So, does this lead to World War III? Most analysts say the probability remains low. Nuclear deterrence, massive U.S.-China trade, and fear of global economic collapse all act as brakes. But here's the risk. If missteps pile up, naval standoffs, cyber retaliation, or Russia deepening its role, what started as one oil tanker could ignite a much larger confrontation. For now, this is a warning shot, not a war. But the lines are hardening, the players are positioning, and the world is watching very carefully.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I can feel it. World War III is at hand. And all these different wars breaking out and conflicts and everything, and I think that we just touching the surface of it. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. Just like that fraud in Minnesota, but that too is another video. I'm gonna get back with you on some more with the United States and Venezuela, but right now, let's be praying for the nations of the world, because we can very well be in World War III. God bless you.